Now you have 3 ways to download the free versions of SQL Server and Visual Studio. You could go straight to the Microsoft website and download them from there. All you gotta to do is enter these 2 addresses and download the version you want to get. The first address is for the Visual Studio, and the second is for the SQL Server. Okay. I take the address from here and enter it in my browser. Here you can see the free versions of Visual Studio 2022. Just click on this free downloads button. After this, the download process will start for you. Since I already downloaded it, I will skip downloading it. The process of installing SQL Server is the same. Just enter the address I gave you here in your browser and download the free version of this product. If you have purchased the licensed version of these products, you don't need to do this anymore. Or you could type download SQL Server or download Visual Studio into Google Plus, their version, for example, the 2022 version. The first link leads you to Microsoft, which you can click on and start the download. But the best way is to get it from the nil2bil website. You probably know that the nil2bil website is exclusively working on analysis services, and you can access all the tools and news of this field aside from the technical articles in this field that are constantly updated. As you can see on the website, this article that you're seeing is one of the articles from the website, and this is its link. This article is regularly updated, and we have put all the tools necessary to start SQL Server analysis services here in the proper order. It will be updated as soon as the new versions arrive. In the following, the installation of the same tools has been explained in the same order and in the form of a checklist based on which you can carry out the installation process quickly and without any trouble if you do not understand some parts of yourself. Then you can see the training and other relevant items. You no longer need to download the tools and their installation process from various sources. Overall, if you enter this website, it will keep you busy for hours and teach you many things. Let's move on. So I come here and take all the tools that I need. Here we need to download all 3 tools, and all we have to do to download them is to click on them. First of all, you gotta download the SQL Server. By downloading and installing the SQL Server, you are installing the DBMS core, which is required to work with OLTPs and OLAP databases. Since the SQL Server is not functional on its own, you gotta download the other 2 services and activate them on it, which we will talk about in the following. One of them is SSMS, and the other is Analysis Services, which is the main body of our work, and we must activate both during the installation. So all I gotta do to download the first tool, the SQL Server, is to click on it for the download process to start. But since I've done this before, I no longer need to download the tools, and I'll just give you a short explanation about them. Then we'll go to install them. After you download the core of the SQL Server, there's another tool you need to install on the SQL Server. You have to download this tool because the SQL Server alone can't carry out the management task you need it to do. These management tasks include both database types of OLTP and OLAP. Therefore, you gotta install another tool on it through which you can carry out the database management tasks, such as creating databases. This management is SQL Server Management Studio, or SSMS in short. To better understand this, you can consider the SSMS as an interface through which you can connect to both datasets and carry out the object management tasks through them. Let me show you the SSMS environment to understand better what I'm saying. Here you see the SSMS environment, which has been installed on the SQL server. Now you see here that we're graphically seeing the database. I can see the tables in this database if I click here. Here, I can open a new query and type the TSQL commands. Using these commands, I can apply any actions such as fetching, recording, deleting, and updating data. Or, in this section, I can click on Connect and determine which one of the databases I want to connect to. I select this one and hit Connect if I want to connect to OLTPE databases, and this other one to connect to OLAP databases and access the relevant data. So you see that this provides us with a graphic environment in which we can access the SQL Server objects. The third and primary tool for our work that you need to have is the SSAS itself, which is installed in the SQL Server as a service. As I mentioned before and now, I used the word service for the SSAS tool. What does this mean? After installing the SQL Server engine, I can now install the services I need on it to use them. The SSAS service is another one of these services that I need to install and activate while installing the SQL Server, so it can't be downloaded and installed separately. This is why I didn't put this service in this section. So I'll teach you about it in the second step, which discusses installing the SSAS tools. Before moving on with the introduction of the remaining tools, let's answer an essential questions. What are the 3 tools we have introduced so far, and where will we use them? We said earlier that when we're talking about SSAS, we are practically talking about the data. These data have to come from somewhere, OLTPE data or data warehouse, and the analysis we eventually do on them using the SSAS tools, such as creating facts, dimensions, creating hierarchies in dimensions, cubes, named queries, etc., should record the output data in a place, OLAP database. So here's what we say if we want to explain the application of the mentioned tools in short. There needs to be a source where we can store the initial and final data, or the work output. This is the task that SQL Server and its ancillary services carry out. So, what did we mean by the final output we just mentioned? Now let's go to the introduction of the remaining tools. So far, all we talked about the data was that we need to get them from somewhere and save the final output somewhere too. But what did we mean by the final output we just mentioned? This means that after receiving the initial data, the raw data that has undergone no analysis yet, we should have a tool through which we can make our analysis on them and transfer the final result to a specific OLAP database. The tool for this task is the Visual Studio, and the SSAS extension should be activated on it too. So similar to the SQL Server part, we should first download the central core of the work, which is the Visual Studio, and then move on to activate its ancillary services, such as SSAS, the main service for our work, which is known as an extension in the Visual Studio. After downloading the SQL Server and the services it requires, such as SSMS and SSAS, we should now install the Visual Studio. You should probably ask yourself why we need the Visual Studio to work with SSAS. The short answer is that we can practically start working with SSAS only after installing the Visual Studio. You probably know that the Visual Studio is an integrated environment where many tasks can be carried out. For instance, you can use the C# coding language in this environment to create Windows, mobile, and web applications. Business intelligent tasks are among the other functions you can carry out using the Visual Studio. In this case, we have many facilities in the software, tasks such as building a data warehouse, dimensions, and overall model building. You've probably guessed that the same thing with the SQL Server, where many things couldn't be done without installing the central core, goes here too. In other words, if we want to use the SSAS capabilities, we gotta download and install the Visual Studio first, and then download and install this extension using this software. So in the following, we need to install the Visual Studio first. For this purpose, you can use the link below and download the software directly. Now, after downloading the Visual Studio, you gotta download the SSAS extension. In the section where we'll talk about the installation of the tools, we will elaborate on installing a Visual Studio and activating the SQL Server Analysis Service extension on it.